You know, the life of a cadet is go, go, go. And in a course, a leadership course, it's probably a lot to do with just getting through the test and the graded material and moving on. But I can assure you that leadership course, just like when I took law for commanders, I used that stuff 20 years later. I used it a lot. The leadership course, probably don't want to throw that book away. You want to hang on to it because there will come a time soon when you'll have to apply it. For now, get through the test and know you'll be applying it soon.
It's something that they learn throughout their lives. I think some people pick it up at different points in their lives and become stronger based on those experiences. But I don't think you can really point to any specific event.
A lot of the leaders that I've seen will talk to you about their upbringing and how, whether it's an uncle or aunt or father or mother, really served to shape them fundamentally in terms of their approach to leadership.
A person's upbringing, their foundation, whoever they are, when they get here, they are what they are. They were picked probably because they do have a bent towards leadership.
I don't think anyone begins to learn leadership when they're 18. Likewise, I don't think anyone is done learning leadership skills when they're 50, 60, 70.
The cadet experience here in leadership development, I look at it as a triangle. It's got 3 parts. The first part is the leadership learning, something like the behavioral science course in leadership. And that's where you get what I call book learning. The second part of the triangle is applying what you learn, a technique, and there's plenty of opportunity here in the squadron, airmanship, and the academic environment. The third thing is mentoring, and that's where you need someone to give you feedback and let you loop back to your book learning and to applying things so that when you leave here, when those butter bars get pinned on you, you're ready to lead in the Air Force where it's no longer practice, it's the real game.
I believe that the approach that we have, the intentionality that we have towards developing leaders of character really is superior in a lot of ways. And with that said, I would also say that we have a lot of room for improvement.
I'm not a big believer on online training. I'm not a fan of some of the CBTs, computer-based training, and other training that we all do, both cadets and staff and faculty alike. I don't think it's the most effective. I see there's some reasons why we do it that way, but I don't think it's the most effective at all.
I'm really skeptical of online classes, of training, of seminars and lectures and that sort of thing on leadership. I frankly think that it's 99% of the time it's a waste of time. Nothing beats experience. I mean, we can talk about a couple of principles and we can read about leaders, but until we're in situations where we have to make tough decisions, all the seminars in the world aren't really going to help you.
Unless these courses or these seminars or these great speeches are followed up on, I don't know if they're going to have a lasting effect, and I haven't seen them to have a sustained effect without meaningful follow-up. And that's where I really believe mentors and coaches come into play. I also believe that some of the cadet experience in terms of leadership roles and responsibilities, whether it's a team captain on the athletic field or being a cadet squadron commander, I think those things actually leave a lasting impression. But again, even with that, if it's not done in an intentional and deliberate way and there's no follow-up and time for reflection that's built into that process, the effects can be short-lived.
Leadership is experience-based. It's something that you grow into over the years, and hopefully you learn the right lessons. I think we waste an enormous amount of time on the idea that we think we can just train someone to be a leader by giving them a lecture or giving them some online course or telling them to read this or that book. The best way to learn anything is to just go out and do it. Learn from your mistakes and get better with every repetition.
It's only after several years of additional experiences do they really have meaning in where I would say that I've really learned from it.
In taking a course, especially here at the Air Force Academy, where there's so many time pressures, for the most part, you live in the present and you get through it. So I'm not quite sure how much digestion goes on during the course, but I think if a cadet takes a chance at some time to breathe and internalize it, and then when they get leadership positions, whether it be at the airfield, in the squadron, or in an academic environment, they can test fly some of the things they think they learned. So if you have a positive attitude and wanna test it, this is the place to do it. But the book learning stuff, I think it kicks in later. I really do.
You must internalize. You have to internalize. And in fact, our framework for developing leaders of character starts with owning. The idea of ownership, owning the pursuit of that identity. And then you need to have a purposeful and engaging experience. So if you own it and then you engage in a seminar or a course or a coaching relationship, that could have a lasting impact. And of course, the other part of our model is practice. So the idea of own, engage, and practice are fundamental, important to development. But I'd say if you don't have that first step in terms of ownership and internalization, if that's not established, then the engagement model, or no matter how good the course or seminar is, development just won't occur.
I think a foundation was laid at the Academy, but until you really get to apply those principles in real life where it means something more than just an exercise, I don't think they really hit home for everyone.
Leaders develop effective leadership behaviors when they're placed in positions of extreme challenge. Some people call them crucibles. But as far as a commissioning source, I have seen throughout my time in the military that typically a West Point cadet or a West Point graduate would come into the Army more prepared than I felt I came into the Army. And I think that's because of the opportunities that cadet had while at West Point that I did not have in my ROTC experiences.
I learned a lot about leadership as a cadet, but I think some of those lessons I didn't really appreciate until I got into active duty. Most of the things I learned about leadership, I think as a cadet, were based on mistakes I made, things that I regret now, but I think shaped some of the ethics and values that I have today. I learned because there were some painful mistakes.
I learned a lot here at the Air Force Academy. When I was selected for command, I reflected back on what I learned at the Academy. I also reflected on what my mentors told me, and I went into my 2-year command ready to lead, and I think it worked out pretty well, starting back to my cadet foundation as a cadet squadron commander.
Then when I got into the active force, I looked back on some of the experiences I had as a cadet, and I looked at some of the really good and in some cases bad role models I had out in the active force. And all those experiences summed together really, I think, taught me quite a bit about leadership.
I think the leading contributor to cadet development right now is not necessarily based on a position they hold, a specific position, but more on the responsibility that they take. It's that responsibility that I think leads to that leadership development.
I've seen cadets take on a sense of ownership and really engage in a process. I've seen cadets, spend years here, 2 or 3 years, not really understanding and appreciating what we're trying to do, and looking at everything as a mandatory thing, and at some point actually understanding or shifting to understand that what I get out of this is going to be largely based on what I put into it, and my ability to internalize this will make a difference, not just for the institution, but for me personally and the folks that I'm going to have to lead in the future. And when that light bulb goes on, yeah, I think magic happens. It really does.
Here at the Air Force Academy, a cadet is given a golden platter of opportunity. They've got behavioral science courses in leadership. They can take on jobs in their squadron, clubs, airmanship, athletic teams. So there's plenty of opportunity to learn about leadership.
For example, when I was in AOC for CS32 a few years ago, when we had decisions of enrollment or disenrollment for cadets, which are never fun decisions to have to make, I didn't make those decisions in AOC. I looked at the cadet commander and I said, make a decision, I'll support you, but this is your squadron, it's your decision. And I think Then, and even looking in hindsight, those were very developmental experiences for that cadet squadron commander and the flight commander and the element leader, up and down the chain of command.
You know, there are experiences that I've had in my life that have really served as, you know, real salient moments that I can remember back to, whether it's, you know, team captain on a football field in college, or whether it's being a, you know, cadet squadron commander. There are experiences that clearly helped shape me and I reflect on to this day. But what really gives those experiences meaning are the experiences that I'm going through, you know. So I think those things in isolation by themselves don't really get, you know, to real deep, meaningful learning until you have a context to place those in.
The steepest and most positive leadership learning I ever did was when I was a squadron commander, because your decisions and the turn time of dealing with things is so fast. You really got to reflect, act, and move on. So I dealt mostly in the present, but sometimes I looked way back in my past at how I handled a situation, and I would reflect on that learning too.
I think in different situations, when I look into what sort of leadership style should I use or what's appropriate, yeah, I think about my mistakes I made in past in similar situations, and I think about how could I improve over how I did before in some similar situation. I also have some, I guess you'd say, touchstones or role models, people that I've worked for over the years, and I ask myself, hey, how would they handle this situation?
My first real academic course on leadership was during a master's degree program. I learned, I was able to look back on my experiences and do some of that reflecting. But what I think the ideal situation is the way that we have it here. The leader receives some education while also having some experiences, goes out and has more experiences, more opportunities, more responsibility, more decisions to make, and then has time to reflect on those.
You know, when you think about development, you know, development is really defined as the consolidation and crystallization of experiences. So if we're talking about long-term learning, long-term leadership development, and we're calling it development, I think it takes multiple experiences to include a reflection on past things, but also a present-day, no kidding, on-the-court leadership experience to connect with that.
When you combine all three of those things, the academic preparation, the experiences, and the reflection, I think that's the ideal situation to produce the most effective leaders possible.
I see it as a triad, and that is formal learning, laboratory application of what they've learned, and then feedback from a mentor they look up to, somebody who can give them feedback, be it good or bad, to help them improve on what they know.
The issue I would have, though, is to make sure that it's done in a developmental context and not just as a program or not just as a checklist item that I have to do. You know what, 6 months, oh, now I got to give my feedback. I need to go mentor. There really needs to be more of a genuine desire to help grow and develop people. Having mentoring and feedback as a manifestation of that, yes, that would be essential.
So the key to applying what you've learned in a formal course is to have a mentor who isn't just checking off the square. They could look at you applying what you've learned and give you feedback so you can make those adjustments.
I think the most effective way is when we have small groups of people meeting face to face, and ideally in that discussion is guided or facilitated by somebody who also has experience with leadership. Then I think you truly get some leadership education and development going on. There's the education piece, there's the experiential piece, and there's the reflection piece.
They have foundation upbringing, they have some book learning, they have applied what they think they know, and then they have mentors giving them feedback. That's how I think it works.
You've got the full range of experiences, your own and then what you've observed in others, both good and bad.
There's no wrong answer, there's different approaches, but in the end, it's all about leadership.